stars in the spotlight, secrets in the night. Headlines take flight, we're the keepers of the light. The talk of shame, we know the name. Fame's the game, join the flame.
Good morning, guys. Welcome. We are going to read this indictment together. I haven't even read it myself, but make sure you're following because I'm definitely going to be following this case. So hit that subscribe button. I'm just going to pull this up and we're just going to go through this indictment and let's read this together. So I love how they have, this is obviously USA, Southern District of New York, which I believe has a 97% conviction rate. I believe that is the number. Don't quote me on that. And again, for those who don't know, I am not a lawyer. I'm just here for the people. We're going to read these legal docs together and find out what Diddy has been charged with. They put all of his aliases: Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, PD, and Love. Okay, count one, racketeering conspiracy. The grand jury charges for decades Sean Combs, aka all of his aliases. The defendant abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees' resources and influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. I mean, I know this is bad for Diddy, but this feels like, other people, it feels like could go down. They're saying criminal enterprise. Sean Combs, the defendant, operated his business headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment. They name all of his entities. Entities in the Combs businesses included, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcohol spirits business, a marketing agency, and television network. At times relevant to this indictment, the defendant engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse toward women, which we obviously saw. We literally saw video of him dragging Cassie down a hallway, towards women and other individuals. This abuse was at times verbal, emotional, and sexual. As part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. Oh my God. If this, you guys, this goes to trial, I have got to go to New York if this goes to trial. At times, Combs and others acting at his direction made arrangements for women and commercial sex workers to fly to Combs' location. Combs ensured participation from the women by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same and using intimidation and violence. We read all of that in Cassie's civil lawsuit that she had filed. It was filed and then it was settled. We read a lot about that. I have not yet read all of Don Richards' lawsuit yet, but I will, do that. Physical abuse by Sean Combs. The defendant was recurrent and widely known on numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009 and continuing for years. Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at them. These assaults were at times witnessed by others and included one instance at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016, which was captured on video. This is Cassie, and later publicly reported, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave. When a member of hotel security staff intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. Combs' violence was also not limited to these women. It extended to his employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others. Oh, the witness list is going to be wild. Sean Combs, the defendant, used the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. Those employees, including security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors and other close associates, acted as Combs intermediaries, and their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. This is still, mind you, all still count one. We're talking about the racketeering. They talk about the Combs enterprise from at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of this filing of this indictment. Sean Combs, the defendant, as others known and unknown, were members and associates of a criminal organizations, the Combs Enterprise, or the Enterprise. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The arson's crazy because remember, I believe we read in, I think it was Cassie's civil lawsuit. I think was it Kid Cudi? There was like that, his car getting blown up. I'm wondering if that's like the arson. The Combs Enterprise, including its leadership, its members, and its associates, constituted an enterprise as defined by Title 18. That is a group of individuals associated in fact, although not a legal entity. The Combs Enterprise, this, I see the doc now, the Combs Enterprise. This is surviving in the Combs Enterprise, anyone? Consisted of Sean Combs, all of his aliases, entities within the Combs business, including but not limited to Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprise, and Combs Global, individuals employed by and associated with the Combs businesses, and others known and unknown. I really am so curious who in, these organizations is, because I feel like back in the 90s, I don't know if people were signing, NDAs as I guess they were as much as they were. And even so, it's all illegal. So they can all talk. And we're going to hear all of this stuff when it comes out. The Combs Enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in and its activities affected interstate and foreign commerce. The Combs Enterprise operated in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. And all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs was the leader of the Combs Enterprise. Sean Combs was the leader of the Combs Enterprises. That's a statement. Sean Combs participated in unlawful and other activities related to the conduct of the Combs Enterprise affairs. These individuals included certain Combs business employees, such as members of the Combs security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, as well as other close associates of Combs. I hope his sons don't get caught up in this mess. I hope he at least has enough decency to protect them, any of his kids. Purposes of the Combs Enterprise. The purpose of the Combs Enterprise included the following: operating a global business in the media, entertainment, and lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs, a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry, enriching members and associates of the enterprise, including its leader, Combs, and in particular, those who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. Woo, that's a statement. Those who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. Sorry, I have not been paying attention to the comments. I've just been reading that. We can get to that afterwards. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of the Combs Enterprise, including the power of its leader, Combs, through violence, use of firearms, threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, and physical and sexual abuse. Fulfilling, this is what they're saying. This is the purpose of the Combs Enterprise, is fulfilling the personal desires of Combs, particularly those related to Combs' sexual gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers. Enabling Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual violence, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics distribution, and other crimes, and concealing the commission of such acts. securing absolute loyalty from members of the Combs enterprise, including through acts of violence and threats, and protecting the Combs enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from detection and prosecution by law enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against individuals who witnessed the crimes committed by members and associates of the enterprise. So basically, they're saying everyone was there to protect Diddy, and he basically said, it's either me or you, and do it. Otherwise, I'm gonna like do terrible things to you if you don't protect everything that's happening here. Means and methods of the enterprise. Among the means and methods by which Sean Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise conducted and participated in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprises included the following. Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as among other things, quote, freak-offs. We heard about the freak-offs in Cassie's lawsuit. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. I mean, this man, what has he been doing this time? During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. Oh my God, again, we read a lot of this, and that's what's so wild about the Cassie lawsuit, because if he had just settled that, I'm curious if any of this would have come out. Maybe it still would have, because maybe, they still would have gone through with the criminal. But I don't know. It's almost like he called her bluff and she was like, I'm filing. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated the freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms for the freak-offs, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies. Can I just tell you, I definitely want to see the list of required freak-off supplies, just because I want to know who he was sending out to buy required freak-off supplies. Like, I can't even imagine. Including it's going to go into it, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. Cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try to mitigate room damage, arranging for travel for victims, commercial sex workers, and Combs to and from freak-offs. This is absolutely insane. Resupplying Combs with requested supplies, delivering large sums of cash to Combs to pay the commercial sex workers, and scheduling the delivery of IV fluids in or about March 2024 during searches of Combs' residences in Miami and Florida and Los Angeles, California. Law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. This mofo had 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, y'all. I'm sorry, this is not even this. Why you just have stocks of baby oil and lubricant? I mean, I'm surprised he didn't come out with his own line of Sean John lube. Maybe he does. I don't know, but I'm shocked, if you're going to use that much. Um, Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse to cause the victims to engage in freak-offs. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Combs also threatened victims' careers and livelihoods, including if they resisted participating in freak-offs. Victims believed they could not refuse Combs' demands without risking their financial or job security or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional abuse. Combs also used the sensitive and embarrassing and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victims. I mean, one thing I've learned about rich people is that, you know, it's all about what can you have over other people. It's keeping that treasure trove to pull out so that they can, hold it over your head at any time, for blackmail, for extortion, just for all those purposes. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims of and witnesses to his abuse. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs's residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, as well as a drum magazine. So he's like, sounds like he's filing off the serial numbers of these AR-15s. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise enabled Combs' control over victims by following his direction regarding financial payments to victims, advancing or suppressing the victim's career opportunities, and acquiring the controlled substances Combs used to keep the victims compliant. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise at times witnessed Combs' violence toward the victims or the victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening. I felt like, didn't we read, I think I saw somewhere in Dawn Richards, was it Usher, and there was someone else that was at a dinner supposedly where Cassie got hit, allegedly. I think, I don't want to name, I have to read the report, but I remember they named 2 singers who were at a dinner that allegedly that happened at. So I wonder if that's what they're referring to. Instead, members and associates of the Combs enterprise helped conceal the violence and abuse by, among other things, assisting Combs in monitoring and preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotels or Combs residences. These occasions included instances in which a victim was required to remain in hiding, sometimes for several days at a time, to recover from injuries Combs inflicted without being publicly observed. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise also assisted Combs in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee his abuse. When employees witnessed to his abuse or others threatened Combs' authority or reputation, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise engaged in acts of violence, threats of financial and reputational harm, and verbal abuse. These acts of violence included kidnapping and arson. In addition, on multiple occasions, Combs threw both objects and people, as well as hit, dragged, choked, and shoved others. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negative publicity or legal or law enforcement action against him, including in or about late 2023, following public allegations of Combs' crimes, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they experienced or knew to law enforcement. On phone calls, Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with a false narrative of events in order to conceal Combs' crime. Combs caused these calls Combs caused these calls to be recorded on at least 2 occasions. So there's calls of some people, Combs or people in his enterprise, calling to pressure victims after Cassie's lawsuit was filed, so they wouldn't say anything. This was allegedly luncheon. He was allegedly luncheon. Okay. The racketeering conspiracy. Sorry. From at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, and others known and unknown, being persons employed by and associated with the Combs enterprise described in paragraphs 6 through 12 of this indictment, an enterprise engaged in the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States, that is, to conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. Multiple acts involving kidnapping, chargeable under the following provisions of state law, California Penal Code. Multiple acts involving arson, chargeable under this California Penal Code. Multiple acts involving bribery, also under the California Penal Code. Multiple acts indictable under Title 18 relating to tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant. Multiple acts indictable under related to forced labor. Multiple acts indictable under relating to sex trafficking. Multiple acts indictable under Title 18 relating to transportation and inducement to travel for purposes of prostitution and other illegal sexual activities. Multiple offenses involving the possession with intent to distribute or distribution of narcotics and controlled substances, including cocaine, oxycodone, alprazolam. I don't even know how to say all these words. I'm not even going to try. And ketamine. Aiding, abetting, and willfully causing. It was part of the conspiracy that Sean Combs agreed that a conspirator would commit at least 2 acts of racketeering activity in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise. Oh, interesting. So they're saying that he made people in his enterprise commit at least 2 counts of racketeering to prove themselves? I mean, that's what I'm reading in line 14. Notice of special sentencing factor. Okay. From at least in or about 2009 up into, including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere as part of his agreement to conduct and participate in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering, Sean Combs agreed to, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, obtain, advertise, maintain, patronize, and solicit by any means a person knowing and in reckless regard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion as described in Title 18, and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial sex act in violation of Title 18. That was a lot of words. I didn't go to law school, so that was a lot of words right there. All right, that was just count 1. We are on count 2, and this whole document is we're on page 11. It's only 14 pages, so it looks like we've got that count, and we got count 2, which is sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and they have victim 1. The grand jury further charges from at least in or about 2009 up into about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. Sean Combs, the defendant, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person knowing and in reckless regard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion as described in Title 18. Any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial sex act and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained a person, victim 1, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim 1 to engage in commercial sex acts, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim one was engaging in commercial sex acts as a result of force, fraud, coercion. They're obviously putting victim one, again, I can only assume, who victim one is. Obviously, they're not naming that. Count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution. The grand jury further charges from at least in or about 2009 up into about including 2024 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. Sean Combs knowingly transported an individual in interstate and foreign commerce with intent that the individual engage in prostitution and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs transported, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution. When they say up to about 2024, was this happening still like even after the lawsuits were getting filed? Forfeiture allegations. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 1 of this indictment, the defendant shall forfeit to the United States any and all interests the defendant acquired or maintained in violation so he has to forfeit anything that was acquired as a result of this, which, that feels like everything, right? Because they're basically saying his entire entity was built on this. Any and all interests, securities, claims against, and property or contractual rights of any kind affording a source of influence over the enterprise name and described herein, which the defendant established, operated, controlled, conducted, and participated in conduct of, and any property constituting and derived from proceeds obtained directly and indirectly said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in the United States currency representing the amounts of proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. Does this basically mean all his accounts is frozen right now? As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 2 of this indictment, Sean Combs shall forfeit to the United States, pursuant to Title 18, any and all property, real and personal, involved in, used, or intended to be used to commit or to facilitate the commission of said offense, and any and all property traceable to such property, any and all property, real and personal, constituting or derived from proceeds obtained directly or indirectly as a result of said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of property involved in said offense and proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. Count 3, it's the same thing. Basically, he has to give up any interest, any property associated with any of these counts. If any of the above described forfeitable property, if any of the above described forfeitable property as a result of any act or omission of the defendant cannot be located upon the exercise of due diligence, or has been transferred or sold to or deposited with a third person, has been placed beyond the jurisdiction of the court, has been substantially diminished in value, or has been commingled with other property which cannot be subdivided, it is the intent of the United States, pursuant to Title 18, to seek forfeiture of any other property of the defendant up to the value of the above forfeitable property. I'm really curious what he has done with his properties. Once these lawsuits started coming in, you have to imagine, like, most people do try to shelter it in some way. And so they're basically saying, like, if we can't find it, we're going to just go find it. Sounds like in any way others. Oh, KJ, you were saying that the people that were named in Don Richards' lawsuit was Neo and Usher, who were allegedly at that dinner where it happened. So yeah. Obviously, I want to go read the Don Richards lawsuit, and I'm going to keep, we'll get the breakdown. I wonder, usually TMZ always has, let's just pull up really quickly. I wonder if they've written up a little summary, because I'm really curious about, have they seized the stuff? Okay, TMZ does have let's see what their write-up says about it real quick. Yeah, 3 counts: racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. I wonder if they mentioned all the baby oil that they found in the raids. Okay, so the names, I couldn't pronounce some of the names of those substances. So it was cocaine, oxycodone, Xanax, GHB, MDMA, and ketamine. Oh, they do mention the 1,000 baby bottles of baby oil and lubricant. And then they talk about what we talked about, that he tried to coerce, allegedly tried to pressure victims through bribery to get them to stay silent. So, yeah. So that's the indictment. And there you have it. So more to come. Thanks for joining. Thanks for having this indictment reading room together early on a Tuesday morning. And make sure you're following the Talk of Shame. I will see you all later.